Hi, I'm Jake Burkett from Grey Alien Games, and I'm going to be talking about Where's My Computer Gone, which is a Gamejam game that I made in Pico-8. This is Pico-8, and it's described as a fantasy console, and kind of like, it's a bit like basic on an old 8-bit system or whatever, because it's limited in scope and what it can do, but those constraints are good. Especially for game jams, and it's got some built-in tools. So first I'm going to load the game. Here we go. It was for Ludum Dare 48, so that's what it's called. Then I can use a hotkey to run the game, which I'm going to do now. Okay, so I made this music by sort of making a load of random patterns because I wanted it to feel like a sort of random bleepy bloopy tune. And then I fiddle with it just a little bit to make it sound a bit more like music. Let's play the game. So this is a non-violent game where you have to collect microchips, until you get them all and you found my computer. So what I did first was I actually just made a ground with a load of sort of dirt and grass on top. And then I put a character in, and I made sure that character could move around and jump. And one of the things with the jump is you can jump a small amount or a bigger amount if you hold it down, right? And there's nice sort of solid gravity. There's a jump noise, a landing noise. There's also a small single frame jumping animation where he sort of throws his chest back and arms wide. This is supposed to be me, by the way. Then I also made sure you could collide with objects like this and you could jump on them. There's also head collision if you bang into overhead platforms. And then I didn't have a walk cycle, and someone on Twitter said, hey, do you want help with that? And they sent me an animation of a 3-frame walk cycle that was pretty cool. I didn't use it exactly, but I sort of used it as an inspiration, and that's where I came up with this sort of walk cycle, okay, which you can see when I'm running up against something. The thing with walk cycles is if you run them too slowly, then your character looks like they're skidding on the ground, and if you run them too fast, they look like a sort of cartoon character skidding to run away. So timing is quite important, and I think I got the right timing. They actually do slide a tiny bit, but faster than this, and they look like they're running super fast. Anyway, let's get going. So yeah, I added in the earth, the gravestones, which later on I added more shadow to, and kind of wall characters. This scene here is inspired by Ghosts and Goblins, which was one of my favorite Commodore 64 games, and I wanted to sort of get that vibe starting in a graveyard. And I also added some extra decorations, like this grass, which is a background thing, this little bit of detritus by the wall and in the pit, and some bones in the earth there. This first bit is just to really show you that you can, jump 2 blocks high, or I guess over the thing. So next room, this has a microchip in it, and when you pick it up, you get the sound, and you know that, okay, that's what I've got to do. And I had fun making these trees. I shaded, one side of them dark and one side lighter, made these little branch graphics, and then I had sort of 2 bushy round-ish blocks for the tree, which allowed me to sort of put a shadow on it, and I'm quite pleased with the effect. What a lot of people do actually, as you go off the screen here and you see there's a microchip up there, some people like jump around and try to get it and realize they can't. Other people who are a bit more au fait with platformers realize that, I'm probably supposed to do something here, and then realize, okay, you can jump across the screen and pick this up. Oh, this game, by the way, I should say a little bit. I often do, I go on walks, right, in the countryside in Dorset, and I take pictures of, my wife takes pictures of me sitting down, staring into the distance with the caption, "Where's my computer?" on. So this game is a sort of homage to that series. And that's why there's a lot of countryside, or more like a forest here, and then ruins, because I'm always finding ruins of either old buildings or farms or whatever. So, and I had fun again making these brick graphics and a sort of shadow under the roof and stuff like that. So, okay, next room. So this shows another chip which you definitely can't reach. You can't get that. But when you're in this room, people figure out, oh yeah, okay, I can jump on these standing stones, get up here, jump across the screen and get that. Some people solve this puzzle first and then go back and get the other one near the start. Okay, let's carry on. All right, now I'm just going to leave that screen because it's really loud. A funny thing about that screen is I wanted to have a nice quiet river that was all gentle and relaxing, and I made the sound effect, but in Pico-8 you can't turn the white noise down to a low volume, and that's the lowest volume there is, so it actually sounds like a roaring sort of river or waterfall or something, but it was supposed to be a quiet little thing. Okay, so now we've reached more gravestone-y stuff. And the idea with this is it's supposed to look like a sort of pit or something in front of the gravestone here. Some people try and get this and realize they can't. Others sort of know immediately, yeah, I'm not going to be able to make that jump. So let's go down the pit. And this is when I started to use sort of block graphics. Sorry, hang on a sec. Right. Okay. And I sort of hid a little microchip down here. I had other things I wanted to do to this game, but it was basically a 3-day game jam, and I did what I could in those 3 days. I was actually due to have an operation the day after the game jam finished, and so I wanted to make sure I could get something playable out with a title screen, you know, enough playability that it was fun, and you know, and that you can actually beat it and it says well done. One thing I did when I got to this screen, it's got a lot of sort of these funny little jumps here, and part of the issue is you can, you know, if it's quite pixel perfect in a way, and if you mess up you would sort of fall down. So I added in a thing called coyote time, I think is the term coined, where you can actually still press jump if you've fallen off the edge up to 4 frames afterwards. So I might already be falling and then I can jump. That's what I did then, right? And it just makes the game a little bit more forgiving with these jumps, and it felt better to me. Anyway, let's go up here. This is supposed to be, I don't know, some ruins in a pit. And then there's a big jump here. This is supposed to be wood, I guess. And you get a key. And this links up to the part of the map we saw earlier, because I wanted to explore with having experiment with having a sort of 2-story part of the map. Right, I've got 9 of 10 chips, and I'm going to go through the door, which is the very last thing I added to the game. So that opens the door, and we go into this room, which is an homage to the Commodore brand and logo. In fact, really the Commodore 64 is what I was thinking of. Let's get the final chip. There you go. And I had sort of fun drawing that Commodore 64 there with the actual official Commodore monitor with all the sort of buttons and lights and stuff in the right place. And that's it. So now we're going to go and have a look at the code. So in Pico-8, you've got the code editor like this. And I've got sort of 5 tabs, each with different type of codes in. And we'll look at that in a minute. Over here, we've got the Sprite Editor. So I've got a couple of different tabs of sprites. This is actually the animation for the chip. I could have made it bounce up and down in code, but I was being lazy and I made it do it in graphics. And notice that it doesn't sort of bounce linearly. It's lingers on the lower and upper frames and moves through the middle one faster. So it's a bit like a sort of fake sine wave. Same with the key. It just indicates to the player that, hey, these are interactive objects you can pick up. That's the computer for the end screen. There's the water, 2 frames, the door. Going back to this one, we've got the player. This is actually their jump, frame, but it's obviously 2 graphics I had to splice together. And here's the walking one. So for the walking, I didn't adjust the upper body. I know some people like to do head bob and stuff. I just adjusted the legs, and it took a while to get this looking right. And it might look weird here, but when it's animated, it actually kind of makes sense. One of the key things I do is the foot. I make sure that it moves back the same amount of pixels each frame, and then the other one lands, and that gives a sort of consistent, sort of almost conveyor belt feel to the feet. So here's the earth and ground and some of these sort of little background elements, gravestones, stuff for the building. Oh, I never used that one. I don't know what that one was for. Tree parts. There's also a thicker tree branch I used in a few places, not many. The wood, there's the thick tree trunk, the blocks. This is the particle effect when you pick up the microchip. So it just goes like a mini spark, a big flash, and then a dot. It's quite fast, and then I'll show 5 of them as a particle effect. This is the UI that goes across the top of the screen. So that's the sprites. Not many, but I had fun making them, and I really did fiddle around for ages, placing little dots like on this rock and stuff to make them look rocky, or this stone and so on. Then you have the level editor, and if I zoom out, let's just have a look here. You can see, the starting area. Let's go up, the starting area, and you can place the sprites as you wish, and it goes all the way along, and then it becomes 2 stories, and the final room, you go through there, and actually in code it wraps back over to this final room. So it's cool that there's a level editor built in. Oh shit, pardon my language, just accidentally drawn it, undone that, good. Okay, so here's the sound effect editor. Let's have a listen. That's when you pick up the microchip. That's jumping, landing. Oh, that's the key. Oh, I didn't use that one. That's opening the door. That's the music. I literally sort of randomized it in C major, and then I actually applied a weird timing to it. Anyway, let's move on. What's this one? Yeah, sorry, that's the really loud water, and it's at the lowest volume I could choose, but it's still super loud. I think that's everything in the sound editor. There's also a tracker to do music, but I didn't add any official music, that was long. I just did that funny little, using the sound effect editor to make the music. There's a lot of different waveforms here. Basically, Pico-8 is super cool because everything you need is built into it, and you're limited in terms of sprite sizes and graphics, so you can't spend too long fiddling around with every last pixel and color. You've got to work with what you've got, and I really like that. So let's look at the code. As I went along, I built a little to-do list up, which is cleared now, and I have got some other items in an external doc which I never got around to doing. Could put them in a sequel. And then I keep a list of polish items, which if there's time, I add to it. Because it's a game jam, I want to have the main thing up and running. And then I did some polish items near the end, like the waterfall, adding in a key and door and stuff like that. In fact, I should even delete that, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, my main code, what this does is it's got the main Pico-8 function. So I did run the game at 60 frames per second. And that even holds at 60 frames a second on mobile, which is pretty cool. And this sort of decides which screen you're on, and decides in the main game, shows all the different sprites that move around. There are some other screens like there's no game over in this game, but there's a game complete and a title screen, and this handles that. Drawing for each different screen. I don't mean gameplay screen. I mean, like title screen, as I say, and different stuff. Drawing the HUD. Init the game, so it initializes the player. It reads in a load of enemy data from the map. It's not really enemies, this is code I used from another game. This is more like reading in the microchips and the keys as a static sprite, because if you look at the map, let's have a look. They're not bouncing, but the game detects that in this pass of the map and turns it into a sort of animated sprite in this bit of code. It's scrolled up. So let's see that. Yeah, and then each room has to be initialized with all the various sprites in it, and any specialized. This is like a hack which starts the water sound in the water screen, and there's some code to handle the changing of screens. So this is kind of top level stuff. So this next one, general functions, I've got the ability to output a debug value, which I did use for some of the jumping code, because it was more complex than it seems, the character movement, and it kept messing up, and I had to sort of fix that. But I've got functions in here that test whether a certain coordinate, either square or pixel, is solid, which is useful for collision detection. Things like that, really. Something for handling printing text centered, just basic little functions, and the sort of thing I could add to and use them in multiple different games. Then I've got a Sprite class. This is used for the player, the chips, and so on. And in another game, it would be used for enemies. And Pico-8 uses Lua, and basically you sort of like construct things like this. You create a variable, which I end up adding into these tables, or arrays of tables, and you put in all the variables you want when you declare them, that's the best way, and then you can modify them later, even if you don't use all of them. So yeah, this is like sprite handling code, like it handles animation, looping animation, tests if they're out of bounds, stuff like that. It sets them up. So that's what that one does. So it says player and bullets. That's because I copied this code from my Gamejam game, which I haven't released yet. And this game doesn't have bullets. It's, you know, just you the player. So there's a whole load more variables for the player. And yeah, bullets are not used. The player movement code is quite complex because there's a collision detection for left and right. There's a collision detection when jumping up and you bang your head on things. And also just like holding down up to make you jump up higher, but making that cancel, you know, walking animation and stuff like that. Also dealing with coyote time as well. And then there's sort of falling down code with gravity, but you don't want to do that whilst you're jumping up. So, you know, there's lots of little tweaks in there that make it all work. Syncing up the legs with the upper body sprite is quite important. Bounds check to changing room, including a little hack which moves you from the one room to the end room, which I showed on the map earlier. Yeah, animation stuff. No bullets, so that's not really applicable, but I think there's collision code in here. Player versus enemies. Well, in this, the enemies with the chips and the keys, so you pick them up and stuff happens. It's a reasonable amount of code. No player death in this game, but the code's still in there. So enemies, they're sprites. This reads the stuff from the map, creates all of the enemies you need for the current room, and then would move them around if they were proper enemies in another game. But in this case, it just sort of animates them. Oh, the water is actually a sprite as well because it has to animate. So that's just basic sort of enemy handling code. What else is in there? No, not much really. This here, when you pick up the key or chip, it shows some particles, and that's what the last tab is. It's basically some sparkles, which are animated particles. You know, and I'm not using the explosion anymore. That was for sort of this other game. So that's it in terms of code, and it's you know, it's pretty simple, but it did take me sort of 3 days off and on making. I did use my Gamejam code, enhanced it, you know, with new stuff for this game, making all the graphics, making the platforming sort of feel good and natural, and I think it does. It feels quite natural. A lot of players say they like it. It feels quite tight, and it's because it's got fast gravity. You can't jump super high, so it's not floaty. You've got air control. You know, you've got the changing frames. The jumping noises and landing, I think, are quite important. So, you know, it does feel pretty good. A few people have done a speed run, and I might record one of those. There is actually a glitch, which is if you jump from here to here, it automatically puts you up on that block, which is not possible, really. It shouldn't be possible. I know why it does it, but I haven't fixed it. It's just to do with going from one screen to another and being placed 1 pixel inside the screen, so you don't automatically flip back to the other one. And then the game says, oh, you're clashing with this block, I'll put you above it. And that's what happens there. I don't know if it's doable from the other direction as well. It might be. Okay. That's it really. That's Where's My Computer Gone in Pico-8. I love using their language. I want to use it for more game jams. Had really good fun making this. You can actually play it on itch.io, and if you want, you can always hit the sort of support this game button and send me a buck or two. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll be back for more soon. Bye.